Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Another windy sunny day in paradise. I have some wonderful news for you today my friends. Caribbean leaders responds to US President Donald Trump's 10% shocking tariffs that he would have placed on the Caribbean islands just this week. Caribbean is fighting back, fighting against the 10% Donald Trump's tariffs that is meant to cripple the Caribbean economy. In this video, I will let you know what exactly the Caribbean leaders said, but at least they're getting the message now that the USA at this time, they thought was an ally, but I've been saying all the time, it's time to bridge the gap between the African continent and the African diaspora. But in this video, I will let you know exactly what Caribbean leaders said. Caribbean leaders' response to Trump's shocking tariffs. Caribbean leaders have expressed significant concern and caution in response to the recent tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. The US has introduced a baseline 10% tariffs on all imports, with certain countries facing higher rates. For many Caribbean nations, this development threatens to disrupt long-standing trade relations and economic stability. This is what Guyana said, my friends. Guyana, particularly affected. Guyana faces a 38% tariff on its exports. 38% tariffs on its exports, including crude oil, gold, rum, sugar, and seafoods. The Guyanese government is actively engaging with the US counterparts to understand and address this issue. Now, Guyana faces the highest so far in the Caribbean because of the oil. The US is smart, you know. When Guyana export oil to the US, they will put a tariff on it, which means the tariff will go towards the US government. They will make money from it, 38% of it, but the exporter will be losing money, and that cost will be passed on to the US consumers. So that will make US oil more attractive. That is why Trump is saying it's time for America to drill, drill, drill. He has a plan. Trinidad and Tobago, the Prime Minister Stuart Young emphasized the government's commitment to responsible negotiations with the US, aiming to safeguard national interests amid the new tariff landscape. The Bahamas. The Bahamian government acknowledged the 10% reciprocal tariff and highlighted the existing trade deficit with the US, signaling a need for careful assessment of the economic implications. Most of the Caribbean nations suffer a deficit, which means that they import a lot more than they export. The smallest independent nation in the Caribbean, St. Kitts and Nevis, the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Tariffs, said they have over $700 billion deficit with the US. They import over $700 billion worth of goods and only export from St. Kitts and Nevis around 23 million. 700 and something million, sorry, not billion, but only export about 23 million. So that's around a 700 million deficit. I will let you listen to a video clip of the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis and what he said, and also the Prime Minister of Jamaica and what he is saying. But Antigua and Barbuda, Ambassador Sir Ron Sanders underscores the historical imbalanced trade relations favoring the US, expressing concerns over potential destabilizing effect of the tariffs on the region. The Caribbean is the largest, one of the largest US customers worldwide. Over $50 billion worth of goods the Caribbean import from America yearly and export very little. So the US is benefiting massively from the Caribbean and CARICOM. Given the approximate 40% of CARICOM exports are destined for the US, the implementation of these tariffs poses a substantial risk to the economic well-being of the Caribbean nations. Regional leaders are actively seeking dialogue and negotiations with US officials to mitigate adverse impacts and preserve crucial trade partnership. I don't know how well that will work. I will let you know. I will play the clip from the Prime Minister of the smallest independent nation in the Caribbean, St. Kitts and Nevis, on what he said about the position of St. Kitts and Nevis and the US and the trade relationship and the deficit. Have a listen, my friends.
When it comes to imports from the United States of America, in 2024, we imported, and this is the number in easy dollars, $754 million, $29,809. $754 million, $29,809 that we imported from the United States of America. In terms of our exports, we only exported $23,901,046.15. $23,901,046.15. That deficit, of course, if you were to do the calculation, is almost $750 million. Almost $750 million that we have a deficit in the United States of America. In other words, the United States of America has a surplus in trade when it comes to St. Kitts and Nevis. Across the CARICOM, the number is calculated to be about $54 billion. This is just goods coming through the airport. Services, we'll do another calculation, but I brought that based on what is expected to happen today. The CARICOM, based on calculations, and I received this from our ambassador in the United States of America, the document that she sent. We have a deficit, and as a CARICOM of about $50 billion with the United States of America. That's the number that was given. So it clearly shows that unlike other regions which have a surplus with the United States in terms of trade, Canada, Mexico, and so forth, we have a deficit. In other words, the United States benefits much more from trading with the Caribbean region than the Caribbean region does with the United States of America. I wanted to take my time with those numbers because in your writings, I hope that these numbers will be reflected in your articles and your news items. St. Kitts and Nevis has a strong case to make when it comes to tariffs. The evidence shows that we don't deserve these tariffs that can increase the cost of living for our people.
There you had it. That was the smallest Prime Minister of the smallest independent Caribbean nation in the Caribbean, the the leader, Prime Minister Dr. Tariffs, he is set to be the CARICOM chairman of CARICOM next year. So his position will be very important on this, my friends. But this is what the Prime Minister of Jamaica said on this matter.
So once we see the downside of the disruptive global order that we have now, we're not going to sit by and wait. There are opportunities that must be had. And so I urge my manufacturers, my business people, before you start to look at the negative, also look for the opportunities. In the past, we used to hope that good friendships will come to our rescue. In the past, there are those who believe the world owed us something. That is not my stance, and I have not run this government in that way. We must be prepared for shocks, and we must be resilient. We must be able to absorb the hit and recover. And we must put ourselves in a position to always be welcomed at the table to negotiate. The recent announcement by the United States government of a 10% baseline tariff on imports from all countries set to take effect on April 5th, 2025, introduces a significant shift in global trade policy, one that would impact Jamaica's market access to our largest trading partner. While the government of Jamaica has not yet received formal notification on the precise implementation procedures, including whether these new tariffs will override existing CBI provisions, we are actively engaging with the United States Trade Representative and other relevant authorities to seek urgent clarification. We are also conducting a detailed technical assessment in collaboration with relevant ministries and agencies to fully understand the scope of these tariffs and their implications for Jamaica's trade and industrial policy. These developments do not reflect any erosion in the long-standing and strong bilateral relationship between Jamaica and the United States. Rather, it reflects a broader recalibration of U.S. trade policy that is global in scope. Still, we will use every available diplomatic channel, including working with our CARICOM brothers and sisters and utilizing the Office of Trade Negotiations to seek to preserve the positions our exporters have secured over decades of deepening trade ties with the United States.
That was the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Honorable Andrew Holiness, and said that the days of the Caribbean nations sitting back and waiting for help is over, because that's not his style. And I'm telling you, the Caribbean leaders are slowly fighting back and waking up at the same time. Just 2 days ago, I did a video about bridging the gap between the African continent and the African diaspora, and how an Atlantic bridge in terms of shipment, a memorandum of understanding was signed between Nigeria and St. Kitts and Nevis, where the shipping of goods from Nigeria will be shipped straight to St. Kitts and then redistributed throughout the rest of the Caribbean. Air cargo as well will be discussed, and also the direct flights. We need to get that sorted as well, because imagine, my friends, the Caribbean import over 50 billion US dollars worth of food and products from America yearly, and we are being treated like this. I'm sure Africa could do with some of this money. Why don't we spend some of our money or most of it in Africa? We can get we can get better agricultural products in Africa, better chicken, better goat meat, better rice, whatever it is, better leather, whatever, my friends, we can get that straight out of West Africa. And East Africa, Southern Africa, and North Africa could connect, send their goods to West Africa, and then from West Africa straight across the Atlantic Ocean. That's what the Europeans did hundreds of years ago. They transported enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean. They transported goods as well, food for themselves, products for themselves as well, because they were settling in the Caribbean. They had this grand idea where they will build a slave colony in the Caribbean, make up all the Caribbean islands and turn them into a slave colony, export enslaved Africans from West Africa to do farming, and then when they get the goods in the Caribbean, they will ship it back up to Europe. So they had a triangular trade going on. The shipment of enslaved Africans and goods from West Africa to the Caribbean. They would produce the food, the rum, the sugar, the cotton, tobacco, you name it. They would produce that in the Caribbean, and then they will get another ship to ship from the Caribbean straight to Europe, particularly the UK, my friend. The UK, Spain, and France. Those were the three major powerhouses, and the Dutch was there as well, my friends. And this triangular trade built Europe, made them a wealthy nation that they are today. That is why Europe is so rich and built up, because of our ancestors' blood, sweat, and tears, and the trade that they did, my friends. So why can't we do the same? The model is there already. So what will happen? We will do the same thing. We will import and export goods from Africa to the Caribbean, and from the Caribbean to Africa. People and goods and food, my friends. And we will build together. We don't need to be importing all this stuff from America. Let us go straight to the source, Mother Africa, straight across the Atlantic Ocean. It will take about 10 to 15 days from West Africa by ship, cargo ship, from West Africa to the Caribbean, and we can build ourselves, my friends. Let me know what you think about this topic. My name is Beyond. This is Beyond Uncut. Every day I post videos reacting to breaking news that affect the African continent and the African diaspora, my friends. It's been a pleasure presenting to you. If you're watching for the first time, please consider subscribing to the channel. The link is in the description box. You can also join the channel and become a channel member. The link is here in the description box as well. And I also have a travel channel. You can find the link here. Go on over and subscribe to that channel. You can show support by commenting as well, and liking the video, sharing it with your friends and family that are interested in topics like these. The mission of this channel is to bridge the gap between the African continent and the African diaspora. We are one people separated by a brutal European transatlantic slave trade and colonialism. But those days are over. We will redefine a new model where we will ship goods and services across that same Atlantic Ocean, the transatlantic Caribbean and African trade for prosperity, my friends. Let's make it happen. It's already happening, and it will happen fast, my friends. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you again tomorrow in the next video. Much love, and bye-bye.